listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the NFL free agency and draft preview for Wednesday, April 25th, 2020. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
All right, gang, we're back at it. Brian Blessing and Bruce Marshall. We're in Las Vegas. Bruce, of course, from the legendary publication The Gold Sheep. And we are talking NFL. And the NFL soldiering right along, although the GMs, the word is, Bruce, are trying to convince the league to move the draft back. But the league is having none of it. They are... I see where they're coming, but they were saying that teams in California and New Jersey, because of the complete lockdown, were at a disadvantage, and the league is, I guess, leveled out the playing field. All the teams' offices basically are closed now, but the NFL is pretty adamant. I think they want their calendar year to be and remain calendar year, which I think for all of us is a good thing. If the NFL ever put a delay up in any way, shape, or form at this point, boy, that could be how about just a psychological punch to the gut to everybody, let alone sports fans?
Well, yeah, and I'm wholly supportive of them continuing on their course here. I think we all need it. It's not putting anybody in jeopardy, so go ahead and do it. We need some good news here, and it will be embraced well. There are apparently some the more powerful NFL owners, and we can think who those would be right off the bat. I guess it'd be Jerry Jones and Bob Kraft and a few others want to continue on the current calendar. Now, there's a few GMs who are trying to play politics with this stuff and score some points and thinking, oh, no, I think this is a bad look. We shouldn't do it. No, it's a good look to do. And I'm completely behind the owners who want to keep it on course here. The public needs this now, and the sporting public especially has really been a hit hard here the last couple of weeks. And
we're doing our best here talking sports, and specifically the NFL's giving us something to talk about. But I mean, in terms of the big picture, without being political about it, the thing is, I mean, there's just no shock that it comes even into something like this, where in this current climate, there's no debate. There's never a debate. There's no middle ground. President Trump, gives indications, or he's saying we've got to find a way to get the country up and running, and there's just no middle ground. It's like, oh well, you can't do that. So it's like it's one camp. It's like the thing's got to completely run its course. Then you get, what I mean? It's almost, it's nauseating. Is that he didn't say we're doing it. That's what he wants to do. That we do have to find ways to have light at the end of this tunnel without it automatic. Why does everything have to be this crazed debate? One camp or the other. How about find a way that we get through this with an eye on the future? Even. I said I'm the least political guy you'll ever get. I mean, the stimulus thing it took 5 days because all these other things are being thrown in, and instead of just fix the problem.
Yeah, I saw Lieutenant Governor Patrick from Texas the other night said something that I've said on some other shows too. You saw it, yeah, and I'm in that category. You might be too. We're in a higher risk. I mean, group,
they just take things. It's like, how do you see? Just we want to get back to sports. We were saying, how can you see light at the end of the tunnel when, if you even broach that subject, that yes, if we go out and maybe some of us will get sick, but if we just keep going and going and going, what is life like after this thing? The fact that you even bring up the topic. Yeah. It automatically means, somebody wants people to die. I mean, oh my God, it's like, it's insane. What am I missing? I'm such a simpleton, Bruce. I mean, it's like, you just sit here and it's hard to wrap your arms around the level of stupidity in this day and age.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm in a higher risk category, my age, underlying health, and nobody's asked me if I thought they should, I'm good with. I speak for a lot of people at over 60, and we'll roll with this for a while. But it's if they want to start talking about ramping things up, that's fine. And it's a trade-off. I would take my chances here to try to get the country up and moving again. And I bet a large percentage of us on the higher risk group would as well.
Even just to have,
and
okay, I understand whether I agree with you or I don't. You have an opinion, that's okay. You know what? I hear where you're coming from. What's the risk? What's the reward? What's the big picture? It's just, we love what we do with sports, and we have all these healthy debates. I agree with you. I disagree with you. Or I think this guy's good. I think this guy's bad. It's just the level of just a civil conversation anymore. That's the frustrating thing when you're going through something like this, that even that nonsense hasn't stopped.
Oh yeah, and I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people, as you have too, about all this stuff. And what the NFL, for the NFL to come under criticism here is really outside the bounds here, because it's really, they're doing their own business and they're trying as best they can. They're just trying to lend a little bit of normalcy. They're not putting people in the stands. They're not battling the CDC on the social gathering stuff.
Well, you know how big it is, Bruce, and I apologize for cutting out, but it goes all the way back. Now, whether you agreed with the decision or you didn't, but even, we're talking today, go all the way back, and you've alluded to this before, when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. The NFL, all the way back then, made the decisions to play games for a sense of normalcy. And Pete Rozelle took a lot of heat for that. But even back then, people looked at the NFL as a leader of what is our future going to be like.
Sure. Sport, we went to World War II. They kept playing. And listen, sport has been part of this now, where they've followed along as they should, as everybody should right now. But what the NFL is doing is still, you don't have to completely shut everything off. And
they're working from home.
They're working from home, and they're doing, they're giving us something to watch on TV here. It's not, they're not having big crowds for the draft. They're just, let's hope they continue to stay on course here for the NFL. People need it, and they're not putting anybody really at risk. So go ahead and do it.
And I think the NFL's doing. I think they're in pretty good shape, and the reason the GMs want to move the draft back was they want to do physicals, and they love to poke and prod and see these guys up close and personal before they make a big decision on an asset. But it's in all sports. On my Vegas hockey show, I had the Golden Knights general manager Kelly McCrimmon on the other day. He's hunkered down in a cottage up in Manitoba, but he is doing conference calls, and they're doing all these things to get it back to what it is we talk about. And what I said to him, and he was in complete agreement, I said, there'll be some organizations that will handle this adversity better than others. And honestly, some will mess it up. And the NFL, obviously, you can see the angst, because building through the draft, a bad draft can set you back several years. So even though they're not playing games on a football field as we speak, this is a very important time, because some organizations are going to deal with this a lot better than others.
Oh yeah, some definitely will. And looking down the road here, the NFL hasn't had to make the more difficult decisions, which I hope it doesn't have to make, but it might have to down the road. How long the threat to NFL as we know it down the road here is how long.
If that announcement ever come, Bruce, boy, I'll tell you, we've got the luxury of the summer, but you and I both realize you brought up the age thing, kiddo, and I'm right there with you. We both know how fast time goes.
Yeah, if this social distancing thing, if this is a policy that's to be continued into later in the year, then football, and college football in particular, is going to have some difficult decisions to make. I do think my gut feel is that at some point, and we'll probably see this tested in the other sports beforehand, that they'll be encouraged or they'll get the okay to go ahead and continue, but either with no fans or very few fans for a while, and it'll be up to each league what it wants to do. And I think the sporting public would say, okay, that's good. We'll go for it. Gives you TV, something to watch on TV and something to do, and gets those operations back and running. What it would be at risk down the road, I'm not worried about the players or owners. It's the game day industry and a lot of people who and related industries like ours that depend on this stuff. So, and in that case, we're further up the a higher rung on the ladder than some of the game day industry is. And if they're playing the games, but none of that other stuff is there, those are the people who are going to end up getting more hurt. We probably just, if they're playing the games, we'll have something to do, and it'll keep our industry, get us back up and running. But the game day industry is a pretty big thing. Think all the people that go to football games all over each week, and the people that service all of the crowds and all, they may not get back to work for even longer. So
I think it's a very important topic at the moment. Because the NFL is saying, oh boy, there's this debate now. What do we do with the draft? I think the draft, I think they'll have the stiff upper lip and keep going. We'll get into the football here, but I would just say you and I, Bruce, we do this probably as the crow flies. We're probably, my guess would be about 10, 11 miles away from one another, but in Las Vegas, and I don't think a lot of people have talked about it yet. But we're older, and we're a little common sense thing. Small businesses, whatever, we get everything back up and running. But the industry for this city it's an event destination, and it's tourism and specific to sports betting. Yeah, life will go on, but just how far out this thing bleeds is just daunting, and it could be grisly on the back end for a city like Las Vegas, because I got to believe there's going to be a very long period of reticence for people to hop on a plane and travel.
Oh, sure. And if the social distancing thing endures, that's going to impact the casino and the hotel business. And this city could be sort of the epicenter for that, and other places too. Orlando, places in Florida would have some issues too, and any tourist
New Orleans,
spot in the United States, New Orleans could, definitely. All the hotel casino business. That's it needs people there. So I don't know. We'll just have to roll with it. I think there's businesses, industries that are in worse shape than others, and that's certainly one that's right. That's why they're going to be part of the stimulus package. Goes right to these the hotel industry, which has taken a huge hit.
So listen, to get into the football aspect of it, but it is such a fluid thing that, as we do these updates, you want to know where you stand. But I thought today, Bruce, actually, you brought it up, and I think it's a good topic for us today. Let's just focus on the quarterbacks. And not that we haven't been doing that, but I would say Tom Brady has taken all the oxygen out of the room, and I think we not blue in the face. We've talked so much about Tom Brady and what it means for the future of the Bucs and the NFC South. But let's talk about some of the other guys. And he's been mentioned, Bruce, but we're waiting to see whether in New England Belichick says, Cam Newton's out there now, or an Andy Dalton, or he drafted Jared Stidham in the 4th round last year. And the one thing we're not privy to, we don't see, other than a preseason game, we've never seen what this kid does on a daily basis, what he's like in practice, how much he developed, and his name is there, but people act like it's an afterthought. Is Jared Stidham a real viable option to be the starter on opening day?
Well, apparently he is now, and I think, and they also just brought in Brian Hoyer on a low-cost 1-year deal as insurance, and Hoyer's been there before. Cody Kessler is also still around and has started games, but Stidham would be the odds-on favorite now, and this is a possible landing spot for Cam Newton. Still, we'll have to wait and see. What I think people are looking at here and thinking, well, maybe the Patriots will give it a whirl here with Stidham, is that some of the other quarterbacks that they have brought in over the past decade plus and a little bit further behind Brady have ended up going elsewhere and doing pretty well. Back to Matt Castle had a nice career after he left New England. Jacoby Brissett became a starter. Jimmy Garoppolo became a starter, and I'm probably forgetting one or two others in there who have gone there and have been behind Brady and have left and have done okay. And the thought is that maybe Stidham, if he's as good as those guys, and we don't even know that yet, but if they think, the track record there for Brady backups isn't bad about them being able to handle the assignment, and that's what they're hoping in New England, that Stidham is the guy. Now we've seen very little of him, just some in the preseason last year, and remembering back, to college at Auburn and Baylor. So it's the evidence that he can step in there is a little bit fleeting right now. But usually you give Belichick the benefit of the doubt, and if that's the direction he wants to go, we'll see.
Well, the one thing is, if you just look at what was on the field last year, so much of the Brady and Edelman combination that they were able to, function. The defense was spectacular. That's not going to change. But limited weapons. And, oh, by the way, nobody wants to be the guy that follows the guy. That's the thing. Be it Didham, Dalton, Newt, whoever, you're the guy jumping in after Tom Brady, and you're talking about anvils on somebody's shoulder.
Yeah, the other thing, too, I mean, you're right. The one thing you're saying, this offense wasn't that good last year. Brady was not great last year, and it wasn't all because of him. It's because the supporting cast. Mm-hmm. And this is an offense that really struggled.
Bruce, they couldn't run the football.
They couldn't run the football. There's talk that Edelman might be, shaking the cage here a little bit, too. Maybe he wants out. And so we'll see. But, this isn't the Patriot offense at the heyday of this thing. And, of course, I mean, they lost Gronk. They obviously missed him some last year, too. But it's not the Patriot offense of a decade plus ago that we're going to be looking at in the fall, assuming they play. This offense wasn't that good last year.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. Let's go to the Bears, where Nick Foles goes. And basically, it was a compensatory fourth-round pick to the Jags, so it's kind of a nothing-burger kind of deal. But everybody, and myself included, thought, boy, listen, the Jags were a dysfunctional mess the prior year, but the year before that were a whisker away from going to the Super Bowl. Tons of talent, the coach, lack of discipline. The players were running the asylum. It was ridiculous. And you say, well, Foles maybe can go in there, and all of a sudden, hey, maybe this is a sneaky, really good team with a bounce-back opportunity, and Foles gets hurt. Then, as we always see, some guy comes in, Minshew, and Foles becomes a complete afterthought. Now, a fresh start again for the guy. If you were to completely draw a line through last year for Nick Foles, and we know that Trubisky ran so hot and cold, and maybe the problem to a degree in Chicago is they're clamoring for the backup or the quarterback battle. But how interesting is Nick Foles in Chicago?
Yeah, he's very interesting. The fact he's got a connection to Matt Nagy, the coach from the past at the Eagles and the Chiefs, where Foles made a brief stop, a little longer with the Eagles, and a few years further back when Nagy was there before his career took him elsewhere. So there's a connection there, and that the thought is because of that, maybe Foles should be the favorite to win this job. The other thought, though, is, the only time Foles has really ever functioned well was in the NFL was that time when he was in Philadelphia, when he did at times look like he was going to be maybe a cornerstone guy. But now last year with the injuries, yeah, but his previous stints, the Kansas City and the Rams thing, certainly before didn't work out all that well. So there's some questions about him, but the fact he's closer to Nagy makes you think maybe he is the guy who's going to win this job. Trubisky, we've talked about Trubisky before on this show, and the thought after the season was all Ryan Pace and Nagy said after last season is we're going to bring Trubisky back, but they never said they wouldn't bring in competition for him. Well, here's the competition: Foles. Trubisky did regress last year. A couple of times it looked like he might have figured some things out again. There was a late season game against the Cowboys where Nagy seemed to get the best out of Trubisky, and they had Trubisky running and moving, and he does have some mobility. But then he regressed again after that. It is really tough when a young quarterback seems to be moving along on the learning curve like Trubisky was into his second year and then drop off big time in his third year. That's not the direction you want things to go. That's not the career trajectory you want. So I think my gut feel is Foles will probably be the guy who ends up starting here in Chicago, not just some point in the season. I think he starts in opening week, but we'll see.
And Bruce, we know, we see it every year in the NFL, how things can completely flip-flop. And on an annual basis, there's a team goes from worst to first, or a team that was on the outside looking in and their fortunes completely change. I think where the Bears reside, if Foles were indeed the guy that won the job, you look at the NFC North, like what the Packers did, address their defense, and they had a running game last year, so the Packers are interesting. But in this division, Minnesota, pretty tumultuous offseason for them. Yeah, I think there's an actual opportunity for the Bears, just simply based on where they reside, that if the Foles thing were to be better than serviceable, for them to have a good season.
Yeah, I mean, the Bears didn't fall off. They weren't like the Lions last year. I mean, they did finish 8-8 last year, so they weren't. They didn't fall off the map last year completely. I mean, they regressed some, but I mean, there was a time in the year they looked like they were the favorite to win that division again. Montgomery, the rookie running back from Iowa State, showed a lot of promise last year. They've got some weapons on that offense, and the defense is still pretty good. The problem, Trubisky just didn't progress last year. So if Foles can fix that, maybe the Bears are a factor. They're not that far away. And a lot of people this time last year were thinking the Bears could be a Super Bowl team. So they can mend this thing pretty quickly, and we'll see if Foles is the guy.
Then, and this I think will be an interesting discussion. And I'm no great fan of the guy, but I think we might end up being in opposite camps of this one. I've done other stuff with you, but Phillip Rivers with the Colts, there's just always been something about this guy. I don't know what it is. His reactions after throws, the fiery thing I'm fine with. I don't know. It seems like he always brings you back, get you close, and they don't kick the door down. It's been his whole career for me. But him going to Indianapolis, if the team remains healthy, and last year was a disaster for the Colts in that regard, and they remained competitive. Don't sleep on Marlon Mack. The kid's a monster. They've got a good defense, and I think Frank Reich is one of the real hot and bright young coaches in the league. If Reich and Rivers were to get on the same page, I can see a lot of weeks where this is a real nasty team to play.
Yeah, it could be. And there's a connection, too, just like Nagy with Nick Foles, that Reich has worked with Rivers in the past, that the Chargers, his offensive coordinator, and Nick Sirianni had worked with Rivers in the past with the Chargers. So there's some connections there. So Rivers will be coming into a system, that is familiar to him. So that should be a plus. And here, I think I'd be very surprised if Rivers does not start. Brissett down the stretch last year really had some problems, though. I still think there were a lot of other things going on with the Colts last year. Now, Brissett also was, he wasn't new last year. He had started most of 2017. So I think, but I think there's an upside maybe on Brissett right now. So the thought is that maybe they're also going to draft a quarterback there to groom down the road, and Rivers is a short-term fix. I thought Rivers did regress last year a lot, and he threw 20 picks. That was third most in the league. He had fumble problems as well. If it wasn't for Jameis Winston, we'd be talking about Rivers as being the real crash test dummy in the league last year for quarterbacks. But we'll see how far. I mean, if he's still where he was with the Chargers, he only got the Chargers to the playoffs a couple of times in his career, and never further than he did back in his early years as a starter with the Chargers, which is more than a decade ago. I don't know. I saw. I'm not sure this is much of an upgrade over Brissett, just from watching Rivers last year. Not mobile, and Brissett at least could move around, and I think that's a big plus. If he comes back to where he was a few years ago, perhaps. And remember, too, last year with the Colts, some of the injuries, T.Y. Hilton got hurt last year, too. That was Brissett's top target. The one thing in Rivers' favor, though, he's been pretty durable in his career. He hasn't missed many games. So if you hand the keys to him, he's probably going to be in there. But I do think he's more likely to be starting here than say, Foles in Chicago. Foles is going to have, he's still going to have to fight Trubisky. That's to be determined in training camp whenever they get there. But to me, it looks like the Colts look like they've kind of pivoted to Rivers being their guy this year.
And then the natural segment would be where Rivers departed. Now we'll wrap this up with Cam Newton, but where Cam Newton lands is going to have a big impact on what actually happens here with the Chargers and the number 6 pick. Many mock drafts have them taking Justin Herbert from Oregon, but for argument's sake, as of today, and it may be the case, if Newton doesn't go there and the Chargers take a quarterback, the odds are high Tyrod Taylor is going to start on opening day as the quarterback with the Chargers. And this kid does a lot of good things. He's incredible with his feet. He can make plays. He'll win a bunch of football games, Bruce, but he is severely limited. He throws a good deep ball. The problem with Tyrod Taylor, and the problem will never be fixed, and I watched every snap he took with the Buffalo Bills. The passing lanes, Bruce, when he's in the pocket, he's diminutive. And honestly, it's a real shortcoming. There's a reason they take 6'4" quarterbacks. The passing lanes, tipped balls, and these are things that there's nothing he can do about. And it's a shortcoming, and he overcomes it on many occasions. But there are many occasions where he just doesn't, maybe not through lack of ability, just because it is what it is. So he's going to win football games for you, and there are going to be games where he does not have a good game, and he can't get at the wideouts, and that's just it is what it is.
He's Tyrod Taylor is the definition of serviceable. I mean, he can do some things for you there. He did. I mean, the Bills got to the playoffs as a wild card in 2017 with him, and he threw
a pick on 1st and goal at the one.
He did,
and they don't win the game. So that's all part of the equation. But I mean, he's more than, if he was 6'4", Bruce, with those feet, he's more than serviceable. He's not.
I know, but he's got limitations, but he would be a fallback option. He's sort of a default option, and if he's there, and I think in any event with the Chargers, they would hope to groom whoever they draft in the first round, Herbert, Jordan Love. Well, maybe they trade up to get Tua.
Isn't it, Bruce? Isn't it Groundhog Day? I mean, we just saw this in Cleveland.
Yeah,
you go in. Yeah. He starts 2-2, and that 5th game is like his world depends on it, because every time he's out there on the field, he's looking over his shoulder for the heir apparent to come in.
Yeah, and as soon as he gets hurt, I mean, and that's what happened in Cleveland there. But they were going to pivot to Mayfield at some point anyway. But the Chargers still fancy themselves as something of a contender here. And last year they were more of an injury issue, I think, with the Chargers than even Indy last year, because the Charger thing really unraveled earlier. They lost a lot of close decisions. They've made a few changes. They've kept some guys there. They franchised Hunter Henry, and that's he'll be the target for whoever a good target. Eckler looks like he's going to be the top running back now that Gordon has left, but Eckler looks fine. So, and the defense is fine enough. So the Chargers think they would not want to look at this as a throwaway year, and to go with a guy who is just serviceable at quarterback, or with a rookie. So that's Taylor and whoever they draft at quarterback. So do they stick there, or are they still looking for somebody else? And that might segue into the next guy we're talking about. I think that's the question here, the quarterback question in the league for me right now. There are two. We touched on them, New England and the Chargers right now, and what they're going to do.
And then let's wrap it up with Cam Newton. Life after Carolina, incredible physical skill set. All the tools are there. It's fair or unfair. We're not there every day. You're not in the locker room. It's demeanor and the things you see and how much of perception is reality. And what, is it Belichick? Who knows? But where he goes not only impacts the team he's going to, but him being available really sends the high end and the top part of the NFL draft into a tizzy if all of a sudden a team that was taking a quarterback wasn't, and someone else is going to come up and upset the apple cart to trade up into that spot. Yeah.
Cam is one of these guys who, not being able to get a proper physical for him, a quarterback you'd be paying maybe to come in to start, you'd want to find out to make sure where he's at. So he's one case where the physical really means something, and a lot of teams are still flying a bit blind, so they would like a little bit more information if they can on Cam. Coming back from the list, Frank, which is not an easy injury to come back from. But it looks like there are only a couple of possible spots where Cam could land and go in to start. And, unlike Jameis Winston, who's probably looking to go in as a backup somewhere, I think that the thought is that Cam is still a starter in this league if he can find the right spot. Now, there's only a couple spots I think you could find him. New England, the Chargers, or maybe Jacksonville right now. As for Cam, we'll get to those teams in this moment here. Cam's whole thing, I mean, we talk, what's the word about Tyrod Taylor? Serviceable. What's the word describes Cam? He's a diva.
Yeah.
But divas aren't necessarily disruptors. I mean, he's not nearly the disruptor a guy like Antonio Brown could be. He was apparently a pretty popular guy in the locker room in Carolina. Yeah, he wears the hats and all in the post game and dresses up like that. But that's a lot of harmless stuff. The diva stuff, that could wear thin, but I mean, he doesn't seem to be a problem.
If you're winning games, they don't care.
Yeah, they don't care, and he seems to be popular in the locker room. Would New England go for him? Maybe, and he would give Josh McDaniels something a little different than he's had with Brady, a quarterback who can really move. That's assuming Cam's foot is okay. The old Cam wasn't moving quite as much the last couple of years, and that's the thing. A guy like Newton, the injury thing seemed to get to grow, and he had the shoulder problem too.
And by the way, the thing we started this, Bruce, at the beginning of this, we talked about the physicals and that the GMs wanted to move the draft back because they want to do physical. This is the guy who is almost the centerpiece of that. It's like, well,
sure.
Before I go and get my meat hooks on this guy, I got to make sure he's in one piece.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what he said at the start here. Yeah, they really got to chest out a franchise quarterback like that. And he is coming off a pretty serious foot surgery there. But, I mean, he does give, he would give Josh McDaniels a little something different. Would Belichick risk on him? Personality-wise, absolutely would. Belichick's had some, he's had Randy Moss there. He brought in Antonio Brown in last year. So he can bring in diva types and deal with them. I still think the Chargers are a possible landing spot, maybe more likely because of what we talked about earlier. There is only so much upside they have with Tyrod Taylor. They would have more upside if Cam is closer to the old Cam. You could actually see the Chargers maybe becoming more of a threat with Cam in there if he's close to his old MVP form. Now, that's 5 years ago now, but I think that might be another. Those are the two most likely spots I think he could go walk in and probably be the starter. Jacksonville, maybe, unless they're going to roll the dice with Minshew, with the quarterback and the GM. Head coach and a GM who are on the hot seat this year. Now, is it more of a risk to bring a guy in like Cam who has won, or do you risk it with the Minshew this year? Those are the only three spots where I could see Newton landing as a starter right now. He could go in as a backup somewhere, and a place like Pittsburgh, I think, would be very interesting. They had some problems once Big Ben got hurt last year. Big Ben's coming back, but he's in his 17th year. He's 38 years old, and he just had 3 tendons attached to his right elbow, so his throwing elbow. So obviously there's high risk there with him, and so maybe Cam would be better off going to a place like that. Whatever it is with him, he's going to be on. He's not getting a long-term deal. It's going to be a short-term deal, probably 2 years, maybe voidable after 1. And this is a chance for him to rehabilitate the rest of his career, but nobody's going to risk a long-term deal on Newton right now. It's going to be short-term for him. He should go somewhere where he can have a good chance to play and maybe set himself up if he is rehabilitated for one more better deal a year or 2 down the road. So I think those are his options. They're not many right now, but there's still a few spots he could end up.
There he is, our good friend Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet. We soldier on, a little focus on the quarterbacks in the NFL as we keep moving forward, hoping to find some light at the end of the tunnel. And the most important position on the field. There's an update on the guys that could change the fortunes for a lot of teams. Bruce, always a fun chat, my friend. Stay safe. Have a good day, bud.
Okay. Talk to you soon, Brian.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening. And if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com. And reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At Betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling. An approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.